Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to our webinar this afternoon on preparing for and recording a careers impact internal leadership review for post 16 FE and ITPs using Compass. I think that is the largest title that we've got for one of our webinars. But thank you for bearing with us there for a moment while we just waited for some of the registered participants to come online. Just to let everybody know that today's session is being recorded. So if anybody has registered that hasn't been able to make it along, then they will still, as you will, get a copy of the recording in the post-session comms. So just to get started, a little introduction. So my name is Peter McKinney. I am a Compass Plus trainer for CEC and I lead on our virtual delivery program. I also support with our face-to-face delivery. And so some of you that are on the webinar today may have met me in the past. Joining me today, I have Tamid. Would you like to just jump on and say hello, Tamid?
Good, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamit. I'm a part of CEC and I'm the customer service advisor. If you guys have any question regarding today's session, please do leave it in the Q&A down below and I'll be more than happy to help. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks very much for that, Tamid. So yeah, just to sort of reiterate there that Tamid is going to be supporting with the group chat and the Q&A today. So as I'm going through the website, the slide deck and the demo, if you do have any questions at all, or if there's any queries, concerns, please feel free to pop them in the group chat and the Q&A, and Tamid will support with those as we go through today's session. So just a couple of learning objectives, so things that we would love you to be able to take away from today's session. So we want you to be able to understand the value and the purpose of the internal leadership review. So one of the newer tools to Compass is the internal leadership review. We want you to really be able to see the benefit of spending that time to carry out one of the reviews. In doing that, it's around that preparation element. So that second one there for preparing for an internal leadership review. So what things do you need to have in place? What steps you need to take? Who do you need to involve, etc. And all of this will be covered in today's session. So making sure that you are effectively prepared for the review when you decide to undertake it. Understand how to record the responses to the internal leadership review in Compass. So again, once you have agreed and you've decided as a school or as certainly, let's say the members of staff involved in careers, once you've agreed where you feel you sit on the maturity model, then recording those results and those answers to Compass. Hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate how really easy and straightforward that is, but just showing you exactly where you go in order to do that. And then the last one is to understand how to action plan and maximize the value. So from the information and the answers that you put to Compass Plus, it will then start to generate your areas of strength, but it'll also start to look at your areas of action and your areas of development. And from that, you can then decide on, one or two and put those into maybe a strategic action plan, a skill development plan, whatever that might be, and then how you can then start to move that forward as well. So we'll be able to show you how and where you can then do that as well. Okay, so just a quick acknowledgement really here. So a lovely welcome to our ITP colleagues. And as I'm going through to today's session, what you will notice that I'm obviously recording the information on Compass. Now, if you are not already onboarded to or using Compass, then this is just a real sort of information share around the ease of being able to get onboarded to Compass. So via the QR code there, it takes you through step by step how you can enroll onto to Compass, or how you can get onboarded onto Compass, and the benefit of them being able to do that as well. So you would log certainly your evaluation and your internal leadership reviews into Compass, and it will then be able to show you where your areas of development are, that type of thing. But you can only do that through Compass or Compass Plus as well. And that can be accessed via the QR code there. So just a real acknowledgement and a nod towards, if you aren't already onboarded onto Compass, that this is where you would go about doing that. Now I'm just going to turn my camera off at the moment so I can then see the full screen. Okay, so getting started then. So the careers impact internal leadership view. So we would like to introduce you to this. The impact internal leadership view is part of the new approach to driving impact across careers education. So The overarching ambition for the system is to allow us and you to be able to standardize continuous improvement and then provide that quality assurance of careers practice. So as an overarching ambition, this is what the internal leadership review is all about. Now, looking at this slide here, so this is just really to assure everyone that it is firmly rooted in the Gatsby benchmarks and other evidence about best practice in careers. The careers impact system, what it aims to do is it aims to provide assurance of quality careers provision. It looks to improve careers provision across the country and then also to elevate the status of careers leadership as well. So hopefully some of you might be familiar with the careers impact system already, and it's got obviously different elements to it. Now we're going to focus on the internal leadership review, which you can see there in the blue circle and highlighted nicely by the big red arrow. The internal leadership review, everybody, is based on the careers impact maturity model, and again we will go through that today as well, which again you can see from this particular slide in this diagram. It underpins and wraps around everything as well. Now, the maturity model is essentially a series of statements which then provide that shared language of how careers can be positioned and used as a driver for college improvement. So it's designed to be done internally as a reflection piece for your college. So the benefits of carrying out an internal leadership review. So we've got five, of which there are more. We've got five benefits here highlighted on this particular slide, and just to kind of touch base with each one of those around the real purpose that we feel that you should be engaging with the internal leadership review. So we've got the engaging leaders there. So by carrying out the internal leadership review, it should and hopefully will unlock, leaders' engagement and then support their wider understanding of careers through the process of reflection and discussion around strategic careers leadership. So a real engaging piece to have all of those relevant members of staff and support staff that are involved in careers involved in this internal leadership review as well. We've got to celebrate success, so it's absolutely an opportunity to reflect on the strength of your careers provision, and this probably doesn't happen anywhere near enough. So whilst I think with a lot of things, people always try to sort of take the negatives away. Where can we improve? What can we look to do better? But the internal leadership review absolutely highlights your areas of strength. And this is something that you should be shouting from the rooftops about. So as you go through the maturity model and then you start to score yourself against the different descriptors, that when you are highlighting your areas of strength, that should be celebrated. Now, whether that is on a school website, sharing with SLT or governors, Ofsted, whoever it may be, absolutely sharing the successes and the joys that you're having within your colleges around careers and careers leadership as well. Then we've got sustaining quality and impact. So embedding impact evaluation of careers into your whole institution and quality assurance mechanisms so that it is no longer just a bolt on to the domain of just the careers leadership. You can then develop the whole institution approach to careers. And then what we're looking at is that wider distributed leadership, which is very much what the internal leadership review is about. Then we've got our embedding best practice. So understanding what best practice looks like, how this can be elevated to ensure meaningful and sustained achievement of the Gatsby benchmarks for each and every learner within your institution. So really knowing what best practice looks like will certainly help you to achieve that as well. And then finally aligning with priorities, and then we've got for this about careers really being seen as part of the solution to drive whole institution improvement and priorities. So again, it could link into that that college improvement plan, and again that would then link into the action points that come out of the data that you input into the product. So just a little another acknowledgement here. Now, this is part of the new statutory guidance that just came out in May, and this is that the DfE strongly recommend the use of the careers impact system. They identify that it supports a quality assured strategic approach to careers leadership, and that it then also houses that standardized language of quality improvement for careers. And again, like it says, it can then be aligned to school and college improvements. The internal leadership review is absolutely something that allows you to be able to do that. It provides that collaborative approach and a very honest reflection piece on where you and your colleagues feel you sit within the maturity of careers leadership across your school and your college and your institutions as well. So it really does allow that inward look as to where that leadership is distributed and where that support is, and how careers is really in the DNA of your school, college, or institution. So we've got just a quick look here at what the maturity model looks like. So you can see the layout here. We've got the descriptors or the statements down the left hand side there, where it's got 1.1, 1.2, and then you've got your sort of grading along from sort of left to right in terms of 1 to 4, and where you feel you sit within that maturity as well. Now, the description of quality within each of those components, it improves as you move left to right, and on a increasing continuum of maturity. So as you start to look at those different levels, you identify, if you're a 1, what it looks like to be a 2, 2 to 3, etc. And so it's a really valuable tool to be able to allow the individual, a pair, a trio, a group of people to come together and really start to analyze, cogitate, digest, deliberate, on where they feel, from their opinion, that your school, your institution, your college sits on this particular maturity model as well. Okay, so looking at this particular slide now, so everything in the careers impact system starts with the maturity model. So the model itself literally unpacks and unpicks what careers leadership is in its entirety, and it gives us and you a shared language and a definition of not only what careers leadership is, but also what high quality practice looks like, and what a journey to maturity of careers leadership also looks like in colleges as well. And it's a really nice part to point out that it is a journey, and that no one that is on this particular session today is likely to have reached maturity, certainly at this stage. And it's uh, an opportunity to look at that you can move both ways on the model. So when we look at that maturity model, you can move from left to right, which would be the expectation, but then you can also move right to left as well as things change within your college and your institution. Another thing that's really, excuse me, another thing that's really important to note is that the model doesn't define the actual role of a careers leader. That's really, really important to note. It's actually much, much bigger than that, and that it articulates careers leadership and its role in whole college improvement as well. So it's a tool, just as a sort of a recap, it's a tool that allows you as a college to reflect on the maturity of careers leadership throughout the college. And it's not about reflecting on the performance of any one individual. So really, just to re-emphasize that it's not just all about the careers leader, it's about the school, the college, the institution, and how that distributed leadership of careers sits within that as well. Okay, so this is what the maturity model looks like. So we've got 6 themes in there, and each one of those themes have benchmarks mapped against it. And what we see is that themes 1 and 2, they are our biggest hitters. They are our leverages. So, and I'll cover that on the next slide. But it's just really to identify and show you where the benchmarks map against particular themes, and that how you can then see that there is the alignment between the two, so that the themes map nicely to our benchmarks. Now, if you are then carrying out your compass evaluation and you are identifying that you are, almost fully achieved your benchmarks, then it should kind of be reflected within your maturity model scores as well, that you would ideally, if you have achieved your benchmarks, be quite high scoring on the internal leadership review as well. But this is just to show you what the different themes are within the maturity model. Okay, so here's where I just mentioned about sort of themes 1 and 2, and how we see these, as we've got in that bottom right corner there, as the keystone components. So almost those corner pieces. And we feel that if we get themes 1, or if you get themes 1 and 2 really right, that hopefully all of the others would then kind of fall into place. So we consider themes 1 and 2 as the big hitters, the leverage themes, where if we get these right, and it's all about having that strategic careers planning in place, and we've got that benchmark 1 achieved. And then obviously with theme 2, we're looking at benchmarks 1 and 3. So we're now looking at addressing the needs of our learners. And if we've got those in place, hopefully those other 4 would then start to just slot into place nicely. Okay, looking at the language on the column. So if we consider how the maturity model continuum works, the descriptors progress from left to right, as we can see here. So 1 to 4. You may experience, like I just mentioned, you might experience movement along the continuum in both directions. Now that could well be expected, but the key here, everybody, is to ask yourselves the question, if it does happen, how do we mitigate against that, and what or how can we put things in place to respond to that if the inevitable does happen? So it's very not necessarily likely, but there is the opportunity that you might move from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, etc. But you could move as things change within your college. You may lose key members of staff, at which point that might then reflect how you would score on the model. So there is possibility for movement in both directions. In less mature colleges, the provision could be great, but it's more likely to be standalone activities and then elements of happenstance. But as you certainly move towards the right, you can see where the provision begins to become more embedded as a whole college approach to responsiveness to individual needs. And in the most mature careers, it becomes part of the solution to tackling strategic problems as well. Okay, so the process now, in terms of how you would go about rolling out the internal leadership review. So we've got the 4 different stages here. And in the first stage, we've got the convene. So you and the other relevant members of your team and your staff, you would all convene um, to start the deliberation around where you feel you sit within the maturity model. So we're starting to do that reflection piece. And the key word would be an honest reflection piece. The second stage, agreeing. So there is the expectation that once individuals, pairs, trios have done this, I certainly have done stage 1, you would then come back together and you would agree, and this is where the negotiation part starts. You would agree where you feel as a college you sit on that maturity model. The third one is the record. So this is where you then transfer that data and information into Compass, into product, to be able to then see what the responses look like, or certainly the information looks like in terms of areas of strength and areas of development. And then finally, the 4th stage is ACT. So this is about using the recommendations from Compass to drive forward action planning. So you can work with your ECs to look at support and resources for those aspects of the maturity model you want to improve upon. So it's not necessarily all down to yourselves in order to be able to provide direction and those answers. You can reach out to people like your ECs if you then want to start your development plan for the year. So looking at the ways in which you may go about rolling out the internal leadership review. So these are just suggestive as well. These are not exhaustive. So, you may do step 1, which is just the principal, the head teacher, etc., and the careers leader. So you might do these individually. One thing to absolutely point out here is it's not just a one person task, activity, job. The careers leader, it's not just down to them to do this. It needs to have multiple people involved, engagement from all areas of careers within the college. And so, for an example, as a minimum, let's say step number 1 there, the principal and then the CL, they would do it. Now, they could do that as a pair, they could do that as individuals and then come back as a pair, but it's all about the agreement on where you feel you sit on that maturity model. And again, it really is about being open and honest with this. You've got step 2 there. I'm not going to read all of these, everybody. You've got step 2, which is around SLT. So have an SLT involved. And it's really important, again, just to highlight and to point out that having key members engaged and involved in this, let's call it CPD even, is really, really important. I was at an event at the start of the year. So granted, it's a few months ago now, but there was a head teacher up on the stage talking about the internal leadership review and how he had taken part in one with his teaching staff. And to quote him, he'd said that it was the best CPD that he'd done in his entire career, and certainly as a head teacher as well, just because of the sharing of information, the understanding of where as a school they were sitting on the model, where in some areas they thought they were the better than what they were, and others not as good as what they hoped. So there's that real sort of eye-opening awareness to where you actually are, and where everybody perceives you to be within that distributed leadership of careers within your schools and your colleges and your institutions. So it's really important just to acknowledge that. But these again are just suggestive ways in which you may choose to sort of undertake the internal leadership review. Okay, everyone. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go into my demo account and show you and basically take you through all of the stages that I've gone through on the slide deck so far. So just coming over to here. So hopefully for the people that are on the webinar today, if you don't already have access to Compass, when you do get your logins, this is what it will look like. For those that have already used Compass, then again, you'll be familiar with this screen. So this is your sort of welcome screen. And if we just scroll down, everything to do with the internal leadership review is here. Okay, so we've got our new careers impact review feature. All we need to do is just click get started. And once we've done that, it takes us to this first page. And within the first page, we've got 3 stages and we follow these sort of systematically. So step 1 is going to give us that preparatory information around what we need to do. Step 2 is going to be an actual copy of the maturity model that you would print out for yourself and for your staff who are going to be involved in the internal leadership review, for them to have a copy each. And then step 3 is where we would then record that information. So if I just go to step 1, clicking on to access essential information, the first part here just says why you need to take part in an internal leadership review and the different things that you should be aware of, and what the benefit of actually doing this is. So this is really important reading, everyone. It gives you that backdrop to the whole why, like it says in the title, and hopefully it'll maybe even allow you to engage more teaching staff, support staff within your college, to come on board and take part in the internal leadership review. So we've got the information there on that. The next part that we've got is, again, we've already seen this. This is just a quick sort of visual of the different themes and how they then map against the benchmarks. So that's just a quick overview. Then if we keep scrolling down, this, in theory, is the first place that we can access the maturity model. We do have it in step 2 as well. So you've got maturity model for schools and special schools, and then maturity model for FE. So we just click into the maturity model for FE, and it takes us to this. Now, I'll just scroll down, and you'll notice it goes theme 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got all of our 6 themes. Now you'd print those out, as many copies as you need for whoever's taking part in the internal leadership review, and then you would sit down as individuals, you would sit down in pairs, as trios, as an SLT group, as governors, whoever it is. But just as a reminder, it's absolutely not one person's job to do this. And so then what we would do is you start to read these statements down the left-hand side, and then you reflect. You then start to decide, right, okay, so 1.1, careers leadership and distributive leadership of careers. So there's a name, careers leader. Yes, we have one of those at college. Great. So we are definitely maturity level number 1. Okay, there is a name, careers leader, who has completed or is in the process of completing appropriate careers leader training. Actually, no, you know what? They haven't done that yet. So we can't move on to maturity level 2. However, we can see what it takes to reach that level of maturity. And so that could be something that we work towards. Flip side of that could be, yeah, absolutely, our careers leaders taking part in the careers leader training. They've passed all the rest of it. So we're definitely a 2. Then we've got leadership with careers includes a trained careers leader with line management at senior level. So they're involved in potentially strategic decision making tasks. Additionally, there is sufficient capacity and resource to deliver strategic careers development plan. So we've got our careers leader is heavily involved in the steering the direction of careers within our college and our institution. So great, we're number three. And you can see everybody as you go from left to right, how that language becomes more embedded into the DNA of careers within your colleges. And the really helpful thing with this is if you are a one, you can see what two looks like. If you're a two, you can see what three looks like. So it really does start to allow you to recognize and put maybe say a plan in place as to what you need to then do to move yourself all the way along to maturity level 4 on these statements. So this is what the maturity model looks like. Okay, so we've accessed that there. If we keep then scrolling down, and again, this next part is just suggestive. So these are the people who may be involved in the internal leadership review. And again, absolutely not exhaustive, but certainly having the right people involved in the internal leadership review will really, really give you a robust reflection on where careers sits within and careers leadership sits within your colleges and institutions as well. So again, I'm not going to read through these. They are just a suggestion of people who may be involved in the internal leadership review. But again, an acknowledgement towards the preparation and the planning is really, really key to the success of the actual internal leadership review itself. So thinking about who you're going to have involved, when they're going to do it, is there time set aside? Again, coming back to the head teacher that spoke at a careers conference, he'd said that they set aside about 2 hours to do it. He said that was very adequate, but again, a great piece of CPD for him and also his staff. So then we can keep going down, excuse me. If we just scroll down, we've got the different suggestive ways of rolling out or carrying out the internal leadership review. So who should be involved? Again, you've got a lovely visual there of an annotated maturity model, and that's exactly what you would do. You know, you may justify why you feel you're at 1 or 2, etc. And then you would then come back together, convene, and then start to sort of discuss as to sort of where, as a whole, you all feel that you sit agreeing on one particular outcome. So we've got different ways of, like we say, of carrying out the internal leadership review, and they are all here in front of you. And again, with some lovely little YouTube videos. Again, these are not very time consuming, sort of 2-3 minutes. So again, really worthwhile a look at and a watch. And then the sort of the final part of this is just resource information and links to help and support for how you can roll internal leadership review out, and where you can then access any materials that would support with the rollout of that as well. So this part, everybody, in step 1 is really, really important to be able to, you know, identify who you need to have in place, when you're going to do it. Do we have the resources available? Does everybody know what this is? And it's just the preparation, I suppose, with anything, you know, it is the key help it run smoothly. So that's step 1. Step 2, you will absolutely recognize this straight away. So this is the second part, or the second place that we can gain access to the maturity model. So you've got it in here in the little hyperlink, but you've also got it here as well. And then the final stage, everyone, is in this section here. So once you've met, you've convened, you've agreed, so you've done the whole deliberation, cogitation, and digestion, and you are then all in agreement that this is where you sit on each one of those statements within the maturity model. It's then time to enter that into the product. And where you would do it is just in this little section here. So record internal leadership review, click into that, and then it basically says, right, have you, before you start to enter this information, have you done this, and this? Have you read the essential guidance, etc.? And it's just that reminder to make sure that you have sort of went about this in the right way. Like it says here, it takes around 30 minutes to complete your internal leadership review, which is probably about average. So that's very similar to your competency evaluations as well. Once you've done all of that, we just click into record our review. Now, the first thing that it asks you is to identify who has taken part in the internal leadership review. So this is where you are just selecting everyone and anyone that has taken part. I'm just going to, randomly select some here, but you would select whoever it is that took part in your internal leadership review. So they're all the people that are selected. I'm then ready to start entering my information. Now, what we see here, as soon as we've gone to click next, is we've got something that looks very similar to our competency evaluation. So where the evaluations would have 1 to 8 to reflect the benchmarks, here we've got our themes 1 to 6. And similar to the evaluations, as we start to populate the data, our little toggle marker will move along from theme 1 all the way to theme 2. So clicking save and continue. The first question is the one around careers leadership and distributed leadership with careers. Do we have a careers leader, etc. Now, what we'll notice here is that where on the maturity model it went from left to right, here it goes from top to bottom. So far left would be at the top here. So this would be maturity 1, then maturity 2, 3, 4. And what we've also got here is we've got the option to say, actually, you know what? We're not actually achieving any of these, because it may be that at your college or at your institution, you don't actually have a careers leader. You may be in the process of recruiting one. Your careers leader may have just left, and so therefore you're in that sort of limbo. So it may be that you don't have one yet, and none of the responses are applicable to yourself. But let's say we're at we've decided we're at maturity 2. So we just click into that box and then save and continue. And hopefully what you can see now is this little line is starting to move along from theme 1 to theme 2. So we just click on all of our answers. So again, on that picture that we've seen in the resources, you've got your annotation, you've got your sections that you have agreed on, and all you're doing now is just starting to transfer that data from your annotated sheets into Compass. Now, let's assume that there's an emergency at college or at your institution, and you need to go and attend to that. So we're in the middle of completing our internal leadership review, but um, we need to go and attend to something within college or at our place of work. We can save it and come back to it later. So let's say we have to log off and then log back on. So if I just click back into tools and then back into get started, if I scroll down a little touch here, what we've got underneath, so this is where we've just been looking at step 1, 2 and 3. Underneath those 3 sections are where your internal leadership reviews are housed. Now, our completed ones are in green, but any that we've got in progress now, normally you would only have one here, but for training purposes, when I've been going through this, I've got more than one. But what we can see here is this is ours, isn't it? Yeah, so the 25th of June. This is the one that we've just started. If I click resume, what Compass will do, it takes me straight back to the question where I left off. So I can then pick it up, and if time allows now, I've got plenty of time, the emergency's been taken care of, I can now go through and start to complete the rest of the internal leadership review data transfer. So you can see again here, look, that everything is moving from left to right as we move through it. So that is how you would then record your information into the product. Now, what we want to then do is we want to see how our results are looking. Now, the internal leadership review is it's expected that it's completed annually, so that you've got time to work on any actions that come out of your internal leadership review, and allowing you that opportunity to be able to put things in place and really start to drive forward sort of strategic planning within your college and in your institution. So what you could then do, and you can see here I've got 2. So one that was completed in 2023, one in 2024. If we completed this, our next one would then appear here at the top. It's the most recent first, so everything always gets superseded. So if I wanted to look at our most recent one, all I would need to do is just click into view responses. And in here is all of the information that I have just input into, or here's where all of the information that I've just input into the product would be housed. So you can see all of our different statements down the left-hand side. And then wherever we're sitting on the response number is what we've input, or what you've input into the product. So anything that's 3 or above will be in green, because that's classed as then a bit of an area of strength. Anything 2 and below, that will be in yellow or amber as an action area for you to be able to work on. So what we can then do now, the first thing we can do is we can select the statement to look at. So we can look at action areas or areas of strength. So if I just go into areas of strength to start with, Compass has highlighted the 4 areas where we've scored highly within our internal leadership review. And this is the part where, when I mentioned on one of the slides, that we shout it from the rooftops. We really share the progress that we're making, the areas that we're having success in, and let those people that's involved in careers know about that as well. So this maybe doesn't happen enough, but it is great for you to be able to put this data and information in front of those people that need to see it. Flip side of that is we could look at our action areas. And again, these are the areas that we've scored to or response to or less, and the areas that we may want to then start to focus on. So some of these answers here could be the things that we start to use as part of our college strategic plan, our action plan, and how we can then start to develop these things and move them forward. So the next time that we do an internal leadership review, we're maybe scoring our governance, our 1.5, rather than it being a 1, it's a 2. Okay, so similar with our learner perception, rather than it being 2.5, sorry, rather than being a 1, it's a 2 or it's a 3, that type of thing. Okay, so we would be looking at our low scoring areas to use as our action points. Now, just something to point out here as well is that we can download this information. So if I just click download, it will take probably a little second, but Compass Plus will transfer this information on the visualization into a PDF for me, and it will then allow me to be able to share that with anybody that I need to. So here we can see how we are scoring on some parts of the maturity model and on those themes, and it's a lovely little PDF. Similarly, everyone, when you start to highlight areas of strength and areas of development, if we then click download, it will produce a PDF of this as well. Okay, so we've got a lovely option to be able to do that. We've also got the option to be able to share our internal leadership review. So we could copy the link, and Compass is telling me there that it's copying the link for my internal leadership review. I can then share that with whoever I want to. I could share that with ECs, could share that with other schools. And the good thing about it is that when the other people open up or get access to that link, it's an interactive link, so it's not static, so they can do exactly what we can do, all of these type of things. They can look at responses, they can highlight strengths, weaknesses, etc. So it's an interactive link that you are sharing with them. Now, something that's really good here, and we can do this also with our evaluations, is that we can look at how we scored ourselves previously. So you can do that sort of year-on-year progression piece. And what you can see here now is we've got the 2023 internal leadership review overlaid onto the 2024 one. So we can see where we were in 2023 and where we are in 2024. So it's great. And again, we could click on download and we can produce a visualization for that. But it's lovely to be able to then demonstrate where we are making progress. And this is a great way to be able to do that as well. So we can see where we were a year ago, where we are now, and then the potential is, right, this is where we maybe want to be next year when we do our review. So a lovely little tool to be able to do that. And that was just in our compare against another year. So we can do that very simply by clicking on that. Now, the next part, as we go down, we can view all of our responses. So if I just click into view responses, Compass will then give me the maturity model and where we have scored ourselves for each one of the different themes. So we can see where we're highlighted. Another real benefit to this is we can see where we are, and we can also then see where we need to get to. So it's about that journey and how we can sort of move our distributed leadership with careers, how we can move that forwards within our institutions. So that's a real handy tool as well. So we've moved it from this part, we're looking at all the responses. The next part that we can look at is the recommendations. And this I feel is a really valuable tool. So quite often, so let's see where we were weak. So 1.5. So 1.5 is a really low scoring, or one of the lowest scoring parts on the maturity model. So if we just scroll down here, okay, I'm just going to put that back up. So we've got 1.5. So support and challenge from governance. Okay, so We've scored ourselves low, so we scored that there are ad hoc opportunities to consider careers provision at governing body meetings and report to governors. So it may be that we have a link governor, we just don't meet with them very often. They maybe don't know what their role is within our college or within our institution, so they don't necessarily maybe hold us to account in terms of that sort of improvement and sort of strategic direction planning. So having this information here, it's great to see. So we scored one, and this is what two looks like. But underneath, which I feel is really valuable, is it shares information, it shares resources to how you can start to increase that score. So it's not just about saying, right, you've scored yourself really poor, or you're on a one, you need to get better. It gives you helpful suggestions as to how you can do that. So it'll have hyperlinks to different training modules, to different resources, so that you can then share them with governors, link governors as well, so that they can fully understand what their role is within sort of careers and sort of careers education within your colleges and your institutions. So it's all about being sort of really supportive in driving forwards those areas of development within your colleges. So it's lovely to be able to see where you need to move to next. But if you're not sure on what that looks like and how you get there, then there are suggestions as well. Now, again, what you focus on. So we've got this up here. It may be that you go, right, yes, I want to look at governance and link governors. It may be that you want to look at more involvement with the enter EAs, that type of thing. But that might then not necessarily fall in line with your sort of college strategic development plan or your action plan. And so it may be that it either aligns with it, or it might be something that you actually bolt onto the side of it as well, because your college priorities might be slightly different to what you have identified within your internal leadership review as well. So it's a really great way to identify your action areas and then understand what you need to do, what you need to put in place to move from a one to a two, and where there is support to help with that as well. So you've got all the rest of the themes underneath everybody, and again, you could then work your way through them, looking at how you've maybe scored yourself. But a really, in terms of an activity to carry out and undertake with your staff, this is really, really invaluable. The information that it can provide you with, the shared knowledge for everybody involved in careers within your colleges and institutions is really key. It to sort of hopefully get that engagement from leaders, get that buy-in from teaching staff as well, and really allowing them to either see the great work that you're doing, or the areas that you then need to maybe develop and move forwards in as well. But a really, really valuable piece of CPD. Okay, just coming back to the demo now. A lot of this is actually just a bit of recap, excuse me. So, how to record your internal leadership review. So I've already identified that on your dashboard page, we're just going to click into the get started, and then it's going to take around about 30 minutes for you to be able to fully complete and record your responses into Compass. We've then got where you can find your actual responses. So up here is where we recorded it. We can then see if we've got any reviews in progress or any that have them being completed. And again, we can then pick those back up and then fully complete them, and that they would be done annually. We've got our insights. So this is looking at our areas of strength, our areas of action, and then also the ability to be able to see year on year, excuse me, what our results are looking at, and hopefully identify where we are making improvements. Excuse me. We've got the view all responses, and there's the option to be able to download those. So very much like the maturity model that you will have already printed out before the review took place, that you've got annotated. This is then just, I'm going to say, a neater and tidier version of this, but it's housed in your product as well. So it's in a safe place. It's not, in the back of a drawer. It's not kind of in a folder somewhere in a cabinet. It's on your product, ready for you to be able to access, or others to be able to access whenever they want to. We've got, just again, this is kind of recapping. So that once you've convened and agreed your responses, we are then going to record them into into Compass. Like I've just mentioned, it's a digital version of the maturity model in there. You can see your progress year on year. So once that's recorded into Compass, you've got that option and ability to see it, year on year, as well as you continue to carry out the internal leadership review. And then the ACT side, everybody, it allows you to highlight your areas of focus, so those action areas, and they may well align with your college action plan, strategic development plan, but they may also need to be something that you would say bolt on to the side of that. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention earlier actually is that when you are looking at your action areas, to really not over um overcompensate yourself. So really just focus on maybe one or two things, just so that when you do want to start putting things in place, that you are not diluting your efforts too much, so that you don't really create or have that impact that you want to, when you are starting to put those action plans into place. So just focusing on, a couple of key areas, so that you can really have that impact with them. Okay, so just a little acknowledgement now. We're coming towards the end of the session today. So just sort of acknowledging where the resources and support are. So we've got our Compass Help Centre, and we've also got the CEC website. So there's lots of information, advice and guidance housed on those. There are lots of articles and links to different parts of the product, that if you are starting to take part in things like the internal leadership review, that you've got that support there as well. There's a resource directory linked probably more primarily to sort of your activities plans, that type of thing. So there's lots of resources in there. And like I mentioned earlier, if you are wanting to engage with the internal leadership review, but you're not quite sure how to go about it, or you've got the results and you maybe want a little bit of help and support as to how you can then turn them into some really tangible actions, then reach out to your ECs. They are there to help you. They are a font of knowledge. And they would be more than happy to put you in communication with other schools, colleges, and institutions that take part in the internal leadership review and had a bit of success. And then you can then start that sort of peer-to-peer and that collaboration work as well. So we've got the other places and other areas that you can find out about support. So access via the QR code there. We've got our FE and ITP Connect newsletter, so you can then access that and get support in that aspect. And then we've also got the independent training providers. So we've got the careersandenterprise.co.uk community as well. Okay, so just bringing things to a bit of a close, and we're looking at the training that's available now, and this will very much link into the maturity model, theme 1.1 around careers leader training. So access via the QR code there. You've got your fully funded careers leader training here, and this training has been put together to really help and allow you to be the best careers leader that you can possibly be. So doing the very best in your job. If you are new to careers, if you're new to role, new to your institution, just understanding what you need to do, when you need to do it, and what you can kind of park and come back to at a later date, because the landscape of careers and careers leadership is changing all the time, and it's really important that you stay up to date and abreast of all of those developments, and this training absolutely supports with that. We've also then got our wider training offer. And this is all this is available to yourself, to teaching staff, and the encouragement will be to get teaching staff to enroll and engage with this as well. And so that's accessed via the QR code. You would just log on to the Careers and Enterprise Academy, and then you create an account, and then you've got access to all of this different careers leader training. Now, it may be that you do the training that links into the internal leadership review first, and then you start to complete one of those. So you've got that sort of really well-rounded knowledge prior to going into that particular task or activity. But there's lots of options here for you to be able to and encourage others to become engaged with as well. Okay, so just before I come back to Tamid, if I could ask everybody that was on the webinar still to access the QR code there for me, and if you could leave any feedback from today's session, that would be really beneficial for us. So we would take on board your feedback really sort of graciously. We understand that, time is not a luxury that you have, and we want to make sure that when you come onto these sessions that they are as impactful and as purposeful as possible. And if you have been on today and there maybe needed to be things that weren't covered that you would like to have been, or things that you maybe want to cover in more detail, to leave the feedback to reflect that, because we absolutely acknowledge it, and then we will make changes to reflect that. But similarly, if you feel that you've now got a much better understanding of the importance of internal leadership review, what it can do for you and your college and your institution, and that you really are in a much better position now than you were just short of an hour ago, then please leave the feedback to reflect that as well. It's always lovely to hear where we're doing things right, because we can then also kind of copy and paste and replicate that further down the line as well. So just as everybody is doing that, Tamid, I will just come back to yourself and ask, are there any outstanding questions at all?
There's nothing on my end, Pete. Thank you.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks very much for your support today, Tamid. And thanks everyone for coming along. I really hope that you found that useful, beneficial. The plan now would be to start to go away and encourage, if you're not already doing this, your principals, your head teachers to get involved in the internal leadership review, and just really emphasize the importance of it, and then start that planning and preparation to roll that out. So again, thanks very much for coming along today. It's been great having you on board, and we look forward to seeing you again on a webinar soon. Thanks now, everyone. Bye bye.